Hi, this is Joyce Van Setters. Welcome to the Pink Book series, stories about mental health and art. If there's something that resonates with you, I hope you join. Welcome to the Pink Book podcast. This is your host, Joyce Van Setters, where I speak to innovators who are doing big things. Today, I am taking you into the fitness industry, my industry. I've been in the fitness industry for about 23 years as a personal trainer and Pilates instructor, and I never get to interview people in my industry, so I have a treat today. A longtime friend of mine, retired IFBB Pro Jason Arntz.
Hello.
Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to join you here.
I am so happy to have you here. We haven't spoken in a long time. Well, social media, you know, but really not in person.
Not in person.
But this is why I always say the fitness industry is the best, because people always ask me, I competed maybe about 5 years and I was done. But people always ask me, why do so many people on your Facebook say happy birthday to you? How you have all those followers on this? And I'm like, if you actually go in and look, it's fitness people.
Yeah.
Like if you compete, fitness people stick together.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing that, they're promoting you, or they're just like pulling behind you.
So there's definitely a common bond that all competitors who have experienced, the sacrifice and the willpower,
that grind.
Yeah, what it takes to start a prep and to finish a prep, and on all levels, professional level, top ranking amateur level, NPC amateur, or even regional level.
Mm-hmm.
But once you go through that, you kind of just share, hey, we've all walked down this path, and it's a mutual respect that I think people just have for each other, one another, and it goes a long way, and you never forget people, along that pathway.
It does. So we're going to get into your story, but before we do, I just wanted to say thank you again for coming here today. You are one of the nicest bodybuilders I've ever met. You really are.
Thank you.
Jason and I actually met because of my coach, Steve Tiley, at the time, was opening a gym, and he was looking for rest R.I.P. We lost Steve, great man. Yeah. But I booked Jason as a guest poser, and literally contacted him out of the blue. He didn't know who I was, and he was in. So came in, nice guy. We had a great time, and we've been friends ever since. So, Jason, where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey. I born and raised here, and now I live in Monmouth County. Well, similar, we're in Monmouth County here. But I live in Marlboro.
Okay.
I grew up in Union County in Springfield.
In Springfield, okay.
Yeah, so a little further up north. Still like more central, northern central Jersey. But born and raised in here.
Okay. And you have siblings?
I do. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me what young Jason was like. Were you always like into working out, or?
I was.
At some sort?
Yeah, I was always an athlete. I was always as a gymnast.
Were you?
Starting off when I was younger.
Okay,
and
I didn't know that.
Got into wrestling and wrestled 7 years, and football 11 years. But I was always, competing in something.
Okay.
Like it was always a drive to compete, and I definitely had more of an unnatural strength than people I grew up with,
right?
And, maybe a higher level of speed and agility, from gymnastics or maybe just naturally. But I transitioned from football. My high school years.
Okay.
Actually,
you played football in high school?
I did, and actually, I think it was my sophomore, junior year. I competed at 16 years old in bodybuilding. I wanted to try it. And,
did you?
Yeah, I won.
That's early.
Teenage Colonial America at a young age, and then after high school, it was, do I pursue college and try to advance that way, or pursue bodybuilding? And I competed again at 19, winning the Teenage New Jersey and Teenage Muscle Mania. And I just kind of turned that way, not a lot of support,
from friends and family, or just
from
in general?
home,
okay.
From home. And it was kind of, I need to get out of where I'm at.
Okay.
And go on this path, and, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You're on your own, and
this was 19 years old?
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew at 17,
okay, what you were going to do.
That I had to go in a different direction.
Okay.
Because there was no support,
Okay.
and not a pleasant, not a pleasant environment.
What did your parents do?
My father drank a lot. He was
Okay.
definitely, he definitely.
Did he get paid for this? Or?
No. He was a hard worker.
Yeah.
He was. They did the best they can.
Okay.
But my father, when he drank, was a little bit of a different person.
Yeah.
Probably drank a little too often,
Okay.
which created the environment that I grew up in and
Mm-hmm.
that I knew I had to get out of. And my mother was, those types that, allowed it.
Yeah.
And allowed us to witness it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and you reach a certain age where you got to stand up and do something, or something bad's going to happen.
Of course.
So I did. And then I knew, look, this isn't getting better. And it's time to leave.
Okay.
So bodybuilding really, because it is, it is an individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me to work on some of the issues that I acquired, in my upbringing, solely by myself, and training was an outlet.
Yeah.
And
Such a discipline too.
well,
In everything in life, like it leads to everything in life.
so my father was like a military type. So
Okay. What branch?
Navy, and
Okay.
his father was
I'm Air Force.
oh shit,
Yeah.
okay.
My dad. Yeah.
So his father, served in the wars, and
Okay.
my father was in Vietnam briefly, and
Okay.
so I kind of had that military mindset.
Got it. Yeah.
So the discipline, for bodybuilding or any sport, that was easy. That was
I get it. Yeah.
that was no problem at all. I could wake up at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I make my bed, I get
Right.
my shit together, and I prepare for my day, and I train, and maybe, just maybe, going through, what I went through as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
allowed me to, I can endure any type of pain. And you go through, to advance.
Kind of build that callus.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you want to reach, stardom, so to speak, at any level, you got to know how to handle pain.
Yeah.
And I was good at that,
Yeah.
good at taking a beating,
Yeah.
so, and then you grow from that,
Mm-hmm.
and bodybuilding opened up new doors, and it was something that I was good at, and it allowed me to create a life now and other opportunities, that I have, and continue to compete, which, I just love competing.
Right.
There's nothing better than that.
Let's start with your early competitive career. You competed at 17, you said, or
16.
16.
Yeah.
Okay, and then 17.
16 and then 19.
Okay. When you were able to leave the house, how were you able to support yourself?
So I worked. I had jobs, and I started some off jobs. We're just going
let's
to call
talk
them.
about it.
We're going to call them off
Off
jobs.
jobs?
Yeah.
Okay.
So hustling, and doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing at the
Okay.
time, and
Making it work.
making it work, and also setting myself up where I could, develop as a bodybuilder, support myself,
Right.
and
Because
continue
it
this
also costs
pathway.
money to compete.
It costs money to compete, food and supplements and PEDs
Exactly.
and everything else.
Exactly.
They don't come cheap.
Right.
However, at 19, I actually, because I had pretty good success as a younger athlete, that I was a sponsored athlete. So
At 19.
yeah,
Wow.
Universal was my
Okay.
first contract.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's pretty big.
And then I had a couple other sponsors that just, hey, listen, we want to help, develop you, and did promotional stuff like that. And I ran a gym since 19 years old, a Diamond Gym in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Wait, you ran Diamond at
I
19?
ran Diamond at 19.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. I used to work out there.
Yeah, it was John Kemper's gym,
Yeah.
and Dwayne McDaniels owns it. But I was
Dwayne, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I ran it for I think 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you get that gig?
Well, I trained there, so I trained there, and I loved the gym, and
Okay.
and it was a perfect place for me because I'm surrounded by bodybuilders and guys that were way more advanced than me at the time, and it was we
probably ran into each other.
I'm sure we did. Yeah, I'm sure we did.
We're around the same age.
Plethora of knowledge, and good learning experiences. So John needed some help part-time at the gym, and so I started filling in some hours, and I just took care of the place, and I cleaned and make sure everything was there, and make sure the dumbbells were in place.
Right.
But back then, there was no computer systems. It was different, you know, and so I used to get people to pay their memberships that were delinquent, and
okay.
which opened up other areas for me to make money. So,
I like that job.
He'd come in and he'd have all this money. He's like, "What's this from?" I say, "Well, he paid, and this guy was late, and I made him pay." And really, and
he's like,
so I mean, John really started Diamond Gym.
Yeah.
It was he wanted a place to train.
Right.
And he was making okay money and supporting his family, but I don't think he realized the type of business it could have been at that time. And that was really the best time for bodybuilding, the 90s.
Yeah.
So he gave me full-time hours, and I started running the gym, and the gym started profiting and doing very well. And now he's bringing in equipment and expanding the place and doing this and doing that.
Nice.
And I spent most of my amateur and the beginning part of my pro career there, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then after 19, what was your next competition? What age were you?
So I competed at 20 years old in the New Jersey State, or I was preparing for the New Jersey State, and I backed out last minute because of severe dehydration. I mean, I was still learning, what to do.
Did you have a coach? Like how did
no,
you get started?
I had a. It wasn't like now.
You just kind of looked up magazines, what people were doing?
Well, no, I knew nutrition. I was studying nutrition at a young age.
You were,
and I was studying what certain foods did to the body. But you don't really. Everything looks great on paper, but until you apply it and see what it does to a body,
right, and to your body,
to my body, it's completely different. So it was all trial and error. So I went like months without carbohydrates and just a high protein diet and 6 pounds of steak a day and water and I just hit the ground. I was like, whoa, something's not right. And my blood sugar was severely depleted and dehydrated, and because if there's no carbohydrates or glycogen in the muscle, all you have is a dehydrated muscle. So
absolutely.
Heart rate was up, so I backed out, and then I competed later on that year, and I did the East Coast, and I won the middleweight class at the East Coast.
Okay.
And I believe the next year I moved on to the Junior USA in Chicago.
Okay.
Ended up taking in the light heavyweights, and
this was NPC?
This was NPC, and I took third at the Junior USA. Took the year off, came back the following year, did the Junior Nationals.
Okay.
Took second in the Junior Nationals, but my body was really starting to move forward.
Right.
So I'm like, fuck it, let's just jump in the Nationals.
Let's do it.
So I jumped in my first Nationals in '95 and took fourth in the light heavyweight class.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a big show.
Now, at this point, are you getting more support now that you...
Oh, I had support. I was already getting magazine coverage.
Okay. No, I mean from your parents, your family.
No,
still not. Okay.
They had never seen me compete.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think when I was 19, they came to one of the teenage shows. Yeah.
Okay.
But at that point,
it's not taken seriously as a job.
Well, it's not that. You stop looking for it.
Oh, got it. Okay.
When I remember, I wouldn't even tell them anything anymore.
Yeah.
Because, why?
What's the point? Yeah.
Yeah. To get hurt again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what's coming. They don't give a shit.
I feel you.
So at that time, I was still on my own and dating, and then I get married at 26, too young. Way too young to get married, and that was...
It happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right. But my career was advancing.
Taking off, okay.
And in 1998, I competed at did the Nationals, ended up dropping down to like 6th place or 7th place in 2006.
Okay.
Which really fucking fueled me. I come back in 2007, and I win the light heavyweights in the USA.
Wow.
And then I take third in the Nationals.
Okay. What year did you get your pro card?
98, the next year.
Okay.
So 98, they introduced the super heavyweight class in the NPC. And I was like, fuck it, I was sucking down to make light heavyweight. I'll go heavyweight now because I think I could beat these guys.
Right.
So I move up to heavyweight class, which, I was the smallest heavyweight. I was probably only 203 pounds.
Right. Is this when the 212 came in?
No, that was like 10 years
okay.
later. Yeah. So this is just in the amateur ranks.
Got it.
So 98, I come back. I do the USA again. I win the heavyweight class of the USA.
Nice.
I missed the overall by 2 points. 97, I missed the overall by 1 point.
Wow.
That's when they only gave out one pro card.
Yeah.
But then I did the nationals in 98, and I won the heavyweight class and the overall. And
nice.
It was, I think, the biggest nationals in history at that time. It was like 183 guys, and Orville Burke won the supers. And
oh my God.
Kevin English won the middleweights.
Kevin.
And, I mean, it was a good lineup.
I remember Kevin.
It was a good year.
And are we still married at this point?
So I had just gotten married in 98.
Okay.
And I guess, you're in the height of your career.
Yeah.
I was also investing in houses.
Okay.
We were
Real
buying
estate.
and selling lower income properties and fixing them up and flipping them.
them.
And so I had money. Money wasn't an issue.
Right.
I still worked at the gym. I had contract money coming in. And I was
Okay.
still hustling. So there was fucking money coming from every direction.
Everywhere.
So you're high off of that.
Right.
That sometimes you don't see, the shit
Yes.
that's right in front of you.
Right.
Being the marriage,
Right.
And I knew after the first year, like, all right, this is not going to fucking last.
Yeah.
This is, this is bad.
Right.
And it took me almost 2 years to finally start the process of the divorce. And then it took almost 3 years for the divorce to go through.
Okay.
Yeah.
You didn't have children?
No.
Okay.
Thank God. Yeah.
Yeah.
All and then that was settled, and I went through a dark time. I went through it, and I had some legal issues during that process also. And, and
can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's all,
what happened?
Oh, well, what time? Which one? There's a couple. So I get a knock on my door. This is while I was married the first time, and it's like 15, 20 cops, and they had a search warrant for my house.
Okay. You were home?
I was home. It was 5 a.m, and I had my gun in my hand. I
Oh,
thought,
boy, just in case.
well, my ex-wife at the time, we were sleeping in separate rooms. She's like, I think somebody's trying to break in.
Oh.
And I had a legal gun.
Right.
It was
So
registered
you didn't
to
know
me.
what was going on.
So I, go to the door and, okay, hold on a second. And I put the gun down, dechamber it. And,
Yeah.
we have a search warrant for your house. And, which they had a probable cause search warrant. And at the time, like, I was a little ignorant to the validity of certain search warrants.
Okay.
Excuse me. So they had a right to come in and look around. They weren't allowed to touch anything.
Okay.
But if they saw something in plain view, then they could continue the search. Okay. So they come in and they threaten me and they got guns pointed at me. Give us all your shit or we're going to tear your fucking house apart. And,
They were looking for drugs.
it was steroids. I mean, it wasn't,
Right.
Like, really?
Right.
So I was 3 weeks out from the Arnold Classic, and I got my personal stuff right here, and they saw it and they destroyed my house. As soon as they saw it, like, okay, and they went and destroyed everything. They went and destroyed everything. And so they charged me with possession with intent. And this dragged on for like 3 years, and I was fighting them on the validity of their search warrant.
Right.
But unfortunately, during that process, I'm also going through my divorce.
Jeez.
Spending $20,000 on this divorce attorney. I went through 3 different attorneys on my criminal one because they kept lying and wouldn't give up their discovery, and they kept trying to submit information that had no backing, and like, oh, he's a big ecstasy dealer in New York City, and we got him selling ecstasy hand to hand. And my attorney comes to me, like, oh, you haven't been honest with us. I'm like, I've told you everything.
Right.
What are you talking about? They told us they have you on video, selling ecstasy hand to hand in New York City in the clubs. I've never been to a fucking club in New York.
Like,
I said, if you believe them, you're fired, and then somebody else, and lose the retainers.
Right.
So after 3 years, I ended up, I copped a plea.
Okay.
And got probation. And I was like, all right, I got to deal with my divorce, and I got to deal with this, and
So you never actually had to go to prison?
No, a couple overnights here and there, and so that was my first arrest.
Okay.
And now I'm going through my divorce. And no, actually, during the process, we sold that house and moved down by Great Adventure.
Okay. Jackson?
Yeah,
Okay.
Plumstead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and at the time, like I'm going through, and I'm still trying to make it work, with her.
Right.
And and I'm nervous about the legality
Yeah.
issues that I'm going through because I'm
Yeah.
thinking I'm facing jail time because I didn't know because I really don't even know what you have me on.
Right.
Because you're saying but there's no proof of anything.
Right.
So we're waiting for that, and then I just caught her, in some lies and stealing money
Okay.
and it was just enough was enough.
Yeah.
So I told her that you file or I file, and so we agreed. But she was still living she was still living at the house.
Oh, okay.
And
That's difficult.
right. So I agreed because I was working up in Cranford at the time. I left Diamond Gym and I was working at there was a Gold's Gym in Cranford.
Oh,
at the time.
okay.
So I was commuting every day, and she was supposed to leave the house when I would come home. I would stay there 3 nights a week, and the nights I was gone, she would have the house.
Okay.
And I always kept my word. I'd stay out 3-4 nights a week, and she would. But every time I would come home, she was still there.
She was still there.
She would never leave, and she would just try to confront me and
Right.
get me aggravated. And at the time, like I had settled my case, and part of my probation was I lost my driver's license for a year.
Okay.
So I had a friend who we gave a job to at the gym, who was driving me back and forth and staying with me at the house, just in case, like I want to witness.
Right, right.
And she assaulted me in front of him, and I called the police, and I had her removed from the house. And like, you want to press charges? And I'm like, well, she just hit me. What do you want me to do? And this is every night. Like, this isn't getting better.
Yeah.
And like, well, we're just telling you, like, you could press charges on her tonight, and file for a restraining order. And then tomorrow she could call up and say you hit her, and we can get a restraining order against you. I'm like, well, what do you do? Like, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, just get her out of the house. Like, she's just not. She agrees to leave.
Right.
Okay, I won't press charges. I go up to work the next day. I get a phone call from the Plumstead Police Department. She just filed a restraining order. You're not allowed at your house for 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
So she outwitted me. I was trying to be too nice.
Yeah, you were nice. Yeah.
So,
wasn't even wit. You were the nicer one.
Right. So then we go to court, and she had to submit her proof, which she had none. I had a witness.
Okay.
Right. And I had witnesses that, how could he have assaulted you? You were out of the house for the night.
Right.
And he was in plain view.
Right. How does that happen?
The whole next day.
Yeah.
And then we get it lying on a police statement. She agrees to drop it and to move out of the house.
Of course.
But she wants money because she has no money. I could go on. So then she tells the police that I have drugs in the house. They illegally come into my house down there after she leaves. They find nothing. They do $36,000 worth of damage to my house. I had my own stuff, which I had a prescription for.
Yeah.
And they come back and they charge me. I had to sue them. So this was the second time I was brought in. They come back and I had to sue them. And then once I sued them, they charged me for my own prescriptions and said they were...
Like made up?
Yeah. I had to prove it. I had to prove it in court.
Oh my God.
And then they dropped it all. Here's the irony, is I won like $10,000.
From suing them?
Yeah, in the damages.
Yeah.
But because her name was on the deed, she got half of it.
Stop. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, you can't write this up.
Were you able to compete during this time?
So I was, but it was tough.
Yeah.
I was not looking the way I should have been looking.
Right. So we get her out of the house. We give her money.
She's out. She's done. The divorce is finally settled in 2003, and I'm just moving on with my life, and things started getting better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Where are we now with competing?
So now I'm like...
Is that when I met you?
I think like 2005 or something.
Yeah, I met you. It had to be later than that because I was in Morris Plains then. I was up in that area, so it had to be like 2005 or 6.
Yeah. Or later. No,
it was 2008.
It was 8 or 9.
It was probably even 9 because I
think it was 9.
I met my husband in 2008.
I was with a different company.
Okay.
And I remember I was doing sales up in that area.
Okay.
And I think they were one of the sponsors of his thing.
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
that's right.
yes.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
yeah.
Yes. That was 2009.
Without plugging them.
Yes.
Yeah, so
that was 2009.
Yeah. So at that time, I'd met my new wife like 2 years later in 2005. And things were getting better. Things were getting better. And
you weren't married when I met you, right?
I was not.
Okay.
We got married in 2008.
Okay.
And I was getting older. And I wanted a family, and I wanted kids, and
still got the competitive bug.
Yeah, but I really did not want to get married again.
Okay.
Wanted a family with kids, of course. And how do you? I didn't do anything to her.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hurt her.
Right.
And to see like the deceit.
Yeah, that's scary.
When somebody, it's crippling. In a sense, where you have these vows and you take this step.
Yep.
And you think you're both on the same page.
Right. Until.
But there's ulterior motives.
Right.
And she loved the spotlight and the glam, and that was a side effect for me. And I've been on covers of magazines and
yeah, you have.
But I didn't do it for that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah,
I
you're a
just want to fucking compete. Even after a show, all right, I got to go do photo shoots. All right.
Right.
All right.
I could see that. Yeah.
That's why I'm so horrible with social media. I don't like taking pictures of myself.
Why don't you hire somebody to do it for you?
Because I'm still in the picture. It's not that. Maybe I'm blackened. From a certain perspective that from my past.
Yeah.
Where you're never good enough.
Yeah.
You grow up with that.
And here image. We all are like the Jason Arntz.
Right.
When you walk through the door,
whatever.
Well, that's what it is.
Right.
But it's easier said than done. I get it. I get it. It's that trauma.
So you hold yourself in a certain perspective.
Yeah.
And sometimes, even though things get better around you, that perspective never changes. You're still who you are as a kid.
Yes.
We're all older now.
Yeah.
But we all think we're kids.
That's why I always say, with everybody calling themselves they, whatever. But we're all they, because when you have a trauma when you're younger, and that younger person doesn't know how to deal with it. Let's say something happened to you when you were like 5. It's probably your earliest memory. I can remember at 5. And you don't know how to deal with it because you're a 5-year-old child. Later on in life, you're married, you're dealing with people. Something happens and that triggers whatever happened to you, that trauma at 5. Yeah. That 5-year-old is the one that shows up.
Right.
That's the problem.
Right.
And so it can be, you act out of rage. It's that 5-year-old trying to figure it out. And that's why they have what's called inner child work. I don't know if you know what that is.
So I went through a phase in my late 20s.
Yeah.
I was dealing with severe anger issues. And, maybe just built up trauma that I just never dealt with. And saw somebody about it for a while. And and it did help. It actually helped. And he had me read a couple books. One book in particular, I'll never forget. It was called Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
I need to read that.
Great. Changed my life. Definitely changed my life. And I'm not a fictional reader, but when it comes to science or chemistry or biology or stuff that is, you can learn from.
Right.
I can read it all day, and this is a book
self-help development, personal development.
So I read this, and they talk about different personalities, and not every personality that they spoke of really pinpointed my issues. But the irony was, the ones that didn't suggest personality traits with me, I saw them in my brother, and I saw them in my sister.
Wow.
So it's the way each child interprets this trauma.
Absolutely.
And
you also have different relationships with your parents. Yeah. Each sibling has a different way that they saw it, their perspective.
And there's people that repeat the patterns, and there's people that don't. And
yeah.
We choose who we are.
Absolutely.
Right.
So take us up to 2009 now.
So 2000, actually, let me go back.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 2007. I was with my current wife. I think we might have been engaged at the time, So I get a phone call from Steve Weinberger, and he's like, "Hey," because I would going up to that time, once a week. I was doing mortgages at the time also, and had a couple of contracts. So I was still earning again.
Okay.
And,
but we stopped hustling here.
We stopped hustling. There might have been a little hustling. Sometimes a little bit lingers.
Yeah, it doesn't go with
I knew sooner or later we all got to grow up.
Right.
So he said, "Yeah, come out. I want to talk to you." I said, "Okay, I'll be there Wednesday." I think I used to go there on Wednesdays to train.
Okay.
And
Bev Francis?
yeah,
Okay.
it was just the fucking best gym.
It's ridiculous.
How you gonna say no?
I know.
But I would drive. And
Yeah.
it wasn't, the traffic wasn't horrible because I would go mid-afternoon getting there.
I was gonna
But
say,
coming
that's
home was
a nightmare.
2 hours and change.
Yeah.
But it was worth it. I brought my meals, so I wasn't
100%
pressured
worth it.
to get home. So he told me at the time they were thinking of introducing a 202-pound weight class
Yes. Okay.
into the pro ranks, and my name came up, and they thought it would be great for athletes.
Right.
And
So for everybody who doesn't know what that is, explain that to them.
okay, so in bodybuilding, before this had happened, it was everybody against everybody.
Right. Didn't matter what.
Didn't matter.
Yeah.
So in the amateur ranks, there's now there's 7 different weight classes.
Okay.
Where you're competing against people within a certain restriction of body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say a heavyweight is 198 and a quarter to 225 and a quarter. Anything over that is super heavyweight. Then you have your middleweights, which are 176 and a quarter up to 198 and a quarter. Then there's the welterweights, lightweights, bantamweights, so forth. Okay. So you're competing against guys that you pair well with,
Right.
because of your height and weight, right? And in the open class, when I turned pro in 98, I competed first in 99. I was doing okay. I was placing top 4, top 5, 6 at the Ironman, 6 at the Arnold, which, against guys that are 260, 280 pounds,
Right.
best in the world, I was holding my own, And then, Ronnie comes through and everybody's just advancing and evolving. And here I am still in the low 200s competing against these guys.
Right.
And it became tough. I was always maybe a top 10 guy, but, it was tough to break. Yeah. So I think the IFBB realized that, hey, we have some good lighter guys, some good smaller guys that, could sell tickets that are not getting a fair share. Mm-hmm. So they introduced the 202-pound class. Okay. And he wanted to know, he's like, if we start this class, do you think, you could make weight? Right.
What did you weigh around then?
I mean, I was probably sucking down and weighing like 207.
207,
okay. Maybe. So I was like, well, what's it going to be? He's like, well, it'll be just like the Open. There'll be an Olympia. There'll be your Olympia qualifiers. We'll introduce it to the Arnold in a couple of years.
That must have been exciting.
So it was fucking great, because I missed the days of like competing for your pro card, where you're competing to win. Right. And I did that my first couple of years as a pro, but then you get, you kind of get scarred a little bit because
of course. You're
not going to beat Ronnie. You're not going to beat Flex Wheeler or Chris Comer. You're just not going to do it. So it's like you're training for second place. Right. And that's tough. Who the
fuck wants to do that?
Right. That's tough to do.
Right.
So he's like, do you think, I said, if you have that, I said, I will fucking make weight. Yes. You can count me in. I'm fucking in. You had me at hello.
I love it, right?
It was, so that really opened up a whole new window of opportunities for me. And did my first, top 3. I qualified. I think it was the New York Pro, and qualified for the Olympia that year, and took 4th in the Olympia my first year. It was.
That was your highest Olympia placement.
Yeah, that was a good. That was a good year. That was 2008. Yeah,
2008. Okay.
So ironically, at the Olympia, my wife could not attend.
Okay.
Because she was 9 months pregnant.
Oh. Okay.
We had got married earlier that year.
Okay.
June that year. The Olympia was in, I think, September, and so. We had a birth coach. Okay. And she's fine. Don't worry about it. Her due date was like the day after the Olympia when I was supposed to fly home. But who delivers on their due date? Right.
Nobody.
Right. My wife twice.
Right. Are you serious?
Yeah, she's punctual. She's
oh my
punctual.
God.
Yeah, we're a little neurotic when it comes to being regimented.
So you weren't there?
So I'm like, can you like hold off? I'm getting on a plane. She's like, well, she's only 1 centimeter. She's only 1 centimeter. You should be fine. She probably won't deliver. She delivered while I was in midair.
Oh my God.
And I the weird thing is I just had a feeling.
You did.
Yeah. I remember looking at my phone because, they're supposed to be turned off, but I told the flight attendants, I said, listen, I'm not shutting my phone off. Right. I said, my wife's in labor. And I said, just keep it on. Sometimes you get a signal through the air. So I remember looking at my watch. It was like 9:30, 9:32, and and I just start crying on the plane. Like something hit me.
Just from looking at your watch?
Well, not like a whimpering. I looked at the time.
Yeah, no, like an overwhelming.
Yeah, like something just hit me, and I checked the time, and I'm looking at my phone, and I didn't get any calls or anything. But I just felt something.
You did.
So I land,
it's so cool.
and I get the text that she delivered at like 9:34.
Wow.
Or like a couple minutes after that. It's fucking weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is weird.
So I rushed to the hospital and got there, and I missed the birth, and.
But that's okay.
Well, not for like the first year. I had to hear that shit every
really?
day.
everything was your fault because you missed the
Everything's my fault. Yeah. I made the second one.
You did.
I didn't miss out on the
you
second
did.
one. Yeah.
Okay, so what was your competitive career like in between your first child and your second?
So at that point, it was just, all right, I'm going to qualify each year and do the Olympias. Okay. So it was just 4-year stretch of that.
Perfect.
And then my second daughter was born in 2012. But that was going to be my last year.
Okay. Kind of gives you time to have a life.
Well, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But the good thing is I'm older. I'm in my upper 30s at this time.
Okay.
I don't have to take as much stuff.
Right.
Because now I got to make weight.
Right.
So I'm not trying to get bigger.
Right. Exactly.
So it was really a breath of fresh air, and it kind of kept my career going a little longer. Okay. Because you can't keep pounding these things,
right.
And expect to preserve any type of longevity.
Exactly.
So I'm like, all right, I'll retire at 40. Okay. But at 40, I left the company I was representing and did sales for, and 7 of us started a different company.
Okay.
So we had just started a company, just moved into a new house. Another sports supplement company. Okay. Yeah. And my daughter was born.
Okay.
So all in the same year. So I'm like, I can't compete. You know, and my last one will be at 41.
Wow.
My last Olympia was 39.
Okay.
Okay, that was my 4th.
Okay. And you placed?
6.
6, okay.
Great lineup, great show. Probably the best I ever looked.
Wow.
And, I probably could have argued maybe 4th or 5th, but whatever, dude. It was a great lineup.
Right.
But then 41 rolls around, and I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Wow. Okay.
And at the time, like, I'm not spending money to do this. Like, I got a newborn. I have two children now. Right. I live in a new house, and
starting a new business.
Started a new company, and money was a little tight. So they were like, "Oh, we'll sponsor you. We'll pay your way." Well, okay. Well, and they offered me like, "Dude, this isn't
right.
The drugs will cost me."
Right. Exactly.
Really? Like, right. And I got to beat the shit out of myself again and go through the, So I went through it. So I just did like the New York Pro.
Okay.
And it was, my body was just, you reach a point where you just don't respond.
Yeah,
and,
of course.
I did not like the way I looked even during the prep. And plus I had like cleaned out for a year.
Okay. Wow. So you're starting over
So I'm starting all over. And then I was thinking, all right, I'm done because they didn't offer me the sponsorship contract. Right. I'm like, I'm not going to support myself through this.
Right.
Like, I'll just be done now. And then it was like 12 weeks out. They said, all right, dude, we'll give you this, which was not even what I asked for.
Right.
Okay, I'll do it. So it's like I started prep at 12 weeks, so I didn't even have time to get my size back.
Right.
And then even halfway through, I'm like, my body's just not responding. Yeah, so I did it just for the sake of doing it. Didn't look the way I wanted to look. And, and then I called it. I retired.
Okay.
Actually, I retired on stage at the New York Pro.
Did you? Okay.
2013.
All right. That's a good feeling.
Yeah.
All right. So we're here. Let's talk about the supplement company, how you got started with that, and how it's going.
So that company I was just talking about, I was with them for 7 years, and I was helping them with some formulations, and I was always good at that. And being a competitive bodybuilder, I always looked at, here's what I got to take from a performance enhancement point of view. Nobody knows nutrition better than I do.
Got it.
Nobody knows drugs better than I do. So what's missing? Right? So what's missing is supplements.
Right.
And even if they aid in 5 to 10% and give you that much of an edge, at that level, you take it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I learned everything I possibly could about supplementing, and not just like supplementing properly, and the timing of certain foods and supplements, right? and what products do what, and what pathways do they take to get there, and what's the best way to do this, and what's the best way for blood to flow for recovery, and nitrous oxide ingredients, and different pathways of blood flow, and enhancing performance, endurance, and aiding in recovery. So I learned, and I reached a point with the company I was at, I'm like, all right, there's no more room for growth here.
Okay.
So I left, and it's time to do it on my own. And the company was already going, and they had grown so much that they were, all right, now we're getting into GNC, now we're getting into Vitamin Shop.
Okay.
We're going into Walmart and Costco. And I'm not knocking, the big box stores.
Yeah, of course not.
But they are watered down, and they don't offer the same types of formulas that your mom and pop stores offer.
Okay.
Just because they, for insurance reasons, well, we're not going to carry this ingredient.
Right.
Even though there's nothing wrong with it, they don't like it. It's flagged or it's looked at or frowned upon. Even though some of these ingredients are perfectly healthy and there's no study that suggests that it does any type of wrongdoing, they don't want to carry it.
Okay.
Because one person 10 years ago said they had an adverse reaction to it, whatever it may be.
Right.
So the company was going in and I guess once you reach a certain, every business has a cap. You have a certain level of this is as high as it's going to go.
Yeah.
And in order to grow, what do?
Right.
So they start selling out.
Okay.
Go into these big box stores where it's a bigger retail market.
Okay.
It's not your competitive athletes, definitely not your serious athletes, and more of like your, hey, I'll go to the gym Monday type of people. Okay, there's this. All right, I'll buy it. And they probably never even use it or finish it. That's what those stores provide. But it's a huge market.
Yeah.
And once the company started going in that direction, I was like, I just, that's not me. That's not the products I want to make.
Okay.
I want to make stuff where athletes want to use it. Like when I took products, I went out and looked for the best, and looked for the ingredient panels and read everything. Didn't care how it tastes because the good products do not taste good.
They don't taste good. Right.
So, so left there, and a few months later started my own brand, and it was in 2019.
How did we come up with the name? i-prevail.
I saw somebody running on the beach, and they had a shirt on, and it just said Prevail.
Okay.
And it just hit me. It just hit me, and it's like I like the i-prevail. Like I'm coming from leaving all these companies, coming from a divorce, coming from my background, coming from legal issues.
Jason, I love that.
Yeah, coming from a bankruptcy, coming from and uphill battle, for which we all have.
Yeah.
I'm no different.
Right.
I'm no different. But if I could, and if I could do it, then I think the average person could relate to it because nothing's easy.
Right.
Nobody has an easy path that
Exactly.
I know.
Right.
So I just think i-prevail just gives people something to strive for and just kind of keeps them motivated and keeps them focused.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this too shall pass.
Exactly.
Right? I'm not religious.
Right. No, but that is an i-prevail.
But you can get through it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And when I say I don't mean me.
Right.
I mean it for everybody.
All
who
of
reads
us.
it.
Yeah. How have you been able to be so successful with it? I feel like it's hard as shit to start a supplement company and maintain it.
So fortunately for me is I did have great relationships with the retail stores that I had been dealing with because of the other two companies. 3 years at one, 7 years at another, 10 years of relationships all across the Northeast.
Nice. Okay.
So like, hey, even if I can get into a portion of these stores, I know they'll support me, especially with the products I'm going to make.
Okay.
Because this is stuff that was selling before these companies took a turn.
Exactly.
And I did, and I started small and funded it myself, and only had a few SKUs, and that money would come in, and I would invest it. And at 6 years, I still haven't taken a paycheck.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I pay my bills, and we're okay, but I still have not taken a paycheck.
Wow.
And it's all in innovation and new products, and now some marketing and building the website and direct to consumer, because when I started I was 100% retail, it was all retail stores, but now retail is starting to take a little hit.
Okay.
And it's tough because it's such a flooded market.
It is.
And you're competing against companies that are all out for the same consumer.
Yes.
We're all out for the same, even though I think my consumer is a little different.
Yeah.
I'm for the people that take it a little more serious.
Okay.
But to make money, you got to sell to the younger crowd
Yeah.
too. And the younger crowds like the flashy labels.
Absolutely.
And it's got to taste great.
Got to taste great.
And for the
they want to see a
ingredient-
bodybuilder.
Right.
It takes it.
And the ingredient panels that I put together,
Mm-hmm.
they're difficult to flavor. So
Okay.
I have to spend extra money on flavoring to get it
Interesting.
right.
Okay.
And that's been the struggling, is still coming up with great formulas
Yeah.
that people will see results from,
Right.
but it's got to taste good. So
The
that's
fact that you are so in it, though,
Yeah.
I mean, to do that is just amazing.
Thank you.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what else you got going on?
So now I'm trying to tap into some international markets
Okay.
and grow the brand internationally little by little. And I still want to stay small.
Okay. We'll be sure to put the link in the bio for
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll
Yeah.
do a code for
Yeah.
for anybody
Definitely.
who's interested in the websites. But now, yeah, I'm going a little south of the border.
Okay.
And
Expanding.
expanding, hitting a couple smaller distributors, so I don't have to grow my inventory too much.
Okay.
And I am primarily taking care of domestic stuff. U.S.
Okay.
comes first.
Yes.
So that's where my heart
Absolutely.
is.
Yep.
But if I can expand the brand,
Mm-hmm.
and get into different countries,
Yeah.
then I'll take that also.
Why not?
Yeah, why not, right?
And you have your show coming
And
up.
I'm still I've been promoting for, I think, 16, 17 years now.
Wow, it's been that long?
Yeah, the NPC Muscle Beach. It's
Okay.
coming up.
And where is it?
It's close. I used to have it here in Tinton Falls.
Wasn't it in Long Branch?
It was in
1 year?
it was in Long Branch for
Okay.
like 3 or 4 years.
That was the year I was 1 year I was going to compete. Remember I contacted you and you're like, you're not serious, Joyce.
Right.
I was
And
like, you're right.
My last year there was the biggest year I had, and it just the venue couldn't hold it.
Really?
So I had to move out. I went
Okay.
to Red Bank, Monmouth Regional,
Okay.
in Tinton Falls.
Okay.
I was there for a few years, and they had some construction done the past 2 years, so I had to move. And now I'm at
Okay.
Ocean Township High
Okay.
School.
And when is it this year?
It's July 26th.
July 26th,
Yeah, the NPC.
Muscle Beach. Okay, NPC. We will put
Muscle
that
Beach
as well.
Muscle Beach National Championships. No. Muscle
Get it
Beach
right,
Championships
Jason.
National Qualifier.
Okay.
So people
it's a
who are-
national qualifier. Okay.
Yeah, it always has been.
Okay.
So for competitors that are starting off,
Yeah.
that are looking to qualify to go to a higher level,
Right.
And that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Is because it's like the grassroots of where people start.
Yes.
And there's been some great pros that have all done my show that have prospered and turned pro. And
Really?
yeah, Shaniqua Grant,
Really?
yeah,
Yes.
she won.
She did your
She
show?
won it at 19. She came up at
Wow.
19 and like, who the fuck is this girl?
That's
And just
awesome.
blew. I mean, she was clearly.
Yeah.
Nick Walker did my show. He won it a few years ago.
Very
So there's been
cool.
some top pros that have come through the Muscle Beach in
That's
New Jersey
awesome.
that have made good names for themselves.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah, not bad.
Jason, I am so glad that you came here.
Thank you
I
for
feel like
having
we
me.
got this story exactly in my head how I wanted it to get out. And I didn't even tell you anything. You just took the lead
Right.
and told the story exactly how I wanted. I mean, you couldn't have told it better.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So again, thank you so much for coming here. I really appreciate you. We're going to get all of the links underneath the podcast. We'll do a code. We'll also do your flyer for your Muscle Beach show.
Thank you.
And we will call that a wrap. I just want to say thank you again one more time for coming. I truly appreciate you.
Thank you.
You are one of the nicest bodybuilders I've ever met. And just to let you know, we are still on Apple, Spotify, and Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. I was going to say Google, but Google does no longer have podcasts.
Oh,
No.
really?
Yeah, so we are on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. And if there's something that resonates with you, check it out.